This was the time that I remember. It was just before Nam, and all that place brought home to us. For we were attracted to the city out of rural America by the power and the glitter. For even if it did not hold, there was then a center. It was way louder and brighter than provincial facsimiles. It roared, it clattered, it battered, and it actually mattered. It sucked us in, but we did not get it, chumps that we were, that we had been lured there. All I was a 20-year-old with 20/20 vision, and now I wanted to be in on the action. For I wanted to go over to those in the know, to smother conscience. I too wanted to be on the take, but with style and cool, if not grace. For there were no minimalists there. There were then aesthetics in our off-avenue caves, but who came out on the Sabbath to party. And one guide to the underground took me to the Newport Jazz Festival, and from there I learned of things further downtown. Coltrane, Mingus, and Monk, and much more. But I never touched smack of the half note, the five-spot, dangerous stuff on stage, loft parties where ideas too were imbibed, the vanguard and the nightlife, that fissure between the worldly wise and self-immolation. So that an economy where it was foremost that things worked according to plan, improvisation the suit of the Antichrist. But something in Lyndon's hard scrabble responded to the back of the bus, though not before Bobby's Bay of Pigs. Then later the Marial invasion would pay us back, but it put gringo sugar brigades on notice that civil rights would not be tolerated during Freedom Summer. Pack your bags, gringo, and go home. Yo no hablo inglés. For if the nightlife had not begun to alter my reflexes, I just might have re-upped, proving to me now personal corruption of value. Because I myself sure as shit didn't know which was the dirty end of the stick.
In the city, I could do what it took to be self-preoccupied, to not imagine the futility of personal indignation in the late hate-invested South, or the grimy precinct squad room, or grunts from everywhere in the world witness at a Bell telephone hour where the righteous were forced to deny themselves here and in the bush. So how did so many resist that? It needed an exercise of character for which I was unprepared, to freely step on a bus bound for the Mississippi border. There'd be no transit authority there. And Malcolm pointed out how scared we were of more than one armed black man, and Hammer and Hank tracking the babe to the white man's secret lair, where later Barry would bond with him. But I was too busy negotiating with high-priced abortionists, who I'd heard about after hours at the end of the bar, and who I saw post-op descending the ramp of the Guggenheim, and I gave more thought to Barney's Beanery, or Genet, or the Brig, or Burroughs, or Godard, and for sure I was too dumb and way too straight to recognize Allen was keeping track of our national soul. And I gave no time at all to the thoughts of Norman Morrison, though I spent time learning Jim's beat. That then you could still know a neighborhood by its popular drinking establishments, but the village joints were safely white, Dylan Thomas notwithstanding, until I allowed dancing at the back of the bar on Christopher Street, violating written and unwritten ordinances, where Jimmy T., who had my dad taught to be a cowboy, found me there while taking a break from a shoot as Marlboro man. This was way before the Stonewall Rebellion, but then that was about the time obscenity became politic. Hey, LBJ, who you going to bomb today? And I was one more small instrument of the fall. But there, back then, near the very center of Greenwich Village time, standing over the confluence of the 6th Avenue and Broadway lines by the 6th Avenue handball court, now a choice location for ads of athletic shoes sewn by colonized TB kids, from where you could hear the catcalls from the women's house of detention up the avenue. Hey, honey, shake it, but don't break it. I realized for the first time, man, I stood for zero. That's why I was no hero. When a large Native American from a plain state, hey-ya, hit me in the third eye for banging on his phone booth. Really, for just being an asshole. For not knowing about Wounded Knee, though I sure as shit knew Ken wasn't Lewis or Clark. Really, for just letting it be. And I couldn't remember how I was to act and forget react. I had to go back to a beginning and build myself from scratch. And maybe with a little less scotch, which couldn't mask the confusion, though Sitting Bull said, if you lose something, go back and find it.
For I came to see unheroically late that we must remember something as towns lose their centers, Manhattan even its real Times Square. And you know they can't leave Yankee Stadium in the ghetto, and the libraries close in the rush, as remembrance seems to be for the few, Marina, who remind us how to remain human. Whereas but a few years ago, it was not uncommon for a journeyman in the trades to preach eloquent civics with unnecessary craftsmanship, like Utah does now and Studs always has, and soon we will be ready to listen again. Hugh Thompson taught us that when he armed his machine gun, sighting down on brothers gone astray, like Frank Serpico did in the city, rather than be a Cali boy. Did you fight or did you run? And what did you tell him, Rusty? We responded to their rifle fire with everything we had. You know, that was the year the summer cooked, as New Yorkers finally began to melt down, which I thought was a pretty liberated place. After the buttoned-up youth of a ranch life, it sure meant more to me than less prosaic things, and there weren't many better places than bars to hang out, as there are worse things to do than downing a cold one watching a Mets game. It's not the catching's the problem, it's the chasing, Casey said. This was before too much coke took out the fun, and Yankee Stadium needs the heat to create revolutionary fervor. And these small pleasures did end many a hardcore radical, leading all the way to Studio 54 extravagance. Remembering Fidel always said he came to pitch, and some people said Rap Brown had a curveball that popped. Was El Duque he? And Hank was going to bring the South to its feet. For this is why taverns became our living rooms, at least for those of us without kitchen tables. And at first I didn't realize addiction recognized is a whole lot more attracting than ambition and avarice denied. For in fact, the worldly wise don't do so good in the intensity of illicit nightlife.
30 years later to the day, about the time it took Ho to cross the border back to his place in history, I spent an Easter afternoon in a spring blizzard, hearing this in the cosmic commentary of the St. Matthew Passion. No wonder we still identify so well with the Holy City. Even so, it will never have more than a AAA club. Through the life might later be revisioned or reviled, Martin's words still give hope of redemption. While Malcolm was just then giving us a piece of his mind, and Sheriff Jim Clark, let's make sure we somewhere here list Bull Connor's name too, and let's list the Parchment Farm Guards who brought South Africa to the Delta with acts we've scrubbed from collective memory until Gary reminded us when he, Bull, was marching with his deputies' revolvers drawn into the sanctuary of Selma's Tabernacle Baptist to guard against insurrection. And like Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney, and the 9 nameless lynched bodies they found instead, let us remember Price, the shooter, and Rainey, and note their present place in history. Here too, you know that's how Lee got there, Marina. And Hank has always said, King and Robinson, they're the real home run hitters.